Happy Valentine's Day. Today on Ian vs. Daddybones, prepare to get fisted by Fisto!
Oh boy, kids, we're gonna have fun today!
Yay! Hey! Alright!
How is everyone doing tonight?
And we are back! Welcome to Ian vs. Daddybones. I'm Ian Daddybones. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Special high five and a shout out to all the Patreon subscribers. We got new ones last week. We got new ones this week. Which means we are still chugging the fuck along down the track of Ian vs. Daddybones. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart to all of the Patreon subscribers. You keep us chugging along. And I got some upcoming news for the Patreon subscribers. But I want to say hi everybody to all the YouTube subscribers, to everybody else. Fuck y'all. You need to head over to the YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, subscribe to Ian vs. Daddybones, click the bell notification, watch the show, share the show, comment on the show, click the like button, and do your part to help spread the word about Ian vs. Daddybones. And you can do that by participating on the show. You can do that by subscribing to the Patreon. You can do that by heading to the OnlyFans, Ian vs. Daddybones, and becoming a fan on there. You can go to the Twitter. You can go to the Instagram. You know how social media works. So head on over to Ian vs. Daddybones all across social media, and you can show your support. Today on the show, as you can see on the table, I have plenty of clutter here before me, and what you see before you is a little combination of stuff from last year. I'm going to talk about some new stuff that I just got over the past week, all ready to talk about new stuff for this year, including dope-ass Thunder Punch He-Man. I got King Hiss over there. Today we're going to be talking about Fisto, but right here we got Mecha Neck and the Ground Ripper, and that's actually going to be next week's episode, because part of this week's episode is segueing into next week's episode, and next week's episode is going to segue into that. So basically, today we're going to be talking about one of the legendary classic Masters of the Universe characters known as Fisto. Now, Fisto first showed up in the vintage line in the 80s, and to my recollection during my childhood, Fisto was one of the first batch of new characters who were added to Masters of the Universe. Like, you had your basic characters that were established with the toy line. You had He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Teela, Ram-Man. I've been watching so much of the Netflix CG He-Man in the Masters of the Universe that I'm so used to Ram-Man being a thing in my house that, but going back, Ram-Man, he was one of the original Masters of the Universe. So you had your basic core set of heroes and villains at the time. And when it came time for new characters to be introduced to the toy line, Fisto was one of those new characters. And in the 80s, it's kind of weird because some people remember what they remember. Now me, I remember television commercials. I remember the way certain characters were released. It seems like some Masters of the Universe characters were often released and paired together because there was something similar with the play feature that they had in common. Like, a good example would be Stinkor, the evil skunk warrior character, and Mossman. Now, Stinkor, one of his special features was he smelled. He was supposed to give off the impression that he smelled like a skunk, but what it really was patchouli oil that was mixed into the plastic to give it that skunk-like smell. And then you had Mossman, who smelled like pine, and you had the two smelly characters. But when Fisto came out, Fisto came out at the same time another character came out named Jitsu. And this similar shared action feature gimmick that both of the characters had was they had oversized hands. Fisto had the giant metal fist. Jitsu had the silver golden, chopping gauntlet, and that's why oftentimes they were paired together, or often put together. Now, in the Filmation cartoon back in the day in the 80s, like Fisto was introduced as a villain of Skeletor. He wasn't introduced as a master or any connection to the masters, nor did Jitsu appear in that episode at all. So in the Filmation cartoons, there was no relationship between Fisto and Jitsu. But going back to the toy line, the action figures came with mini comics, and the mini comics had stories that involved the new characters, but at the same time, from what I understand, there was like a 90-day to I don't know, I know there was like a 90-day window gap between when the comics were being worked on and when the toy design was finally complete before they went to production, which is why some of the mini comics characters have different colors than the actual released figure, like Trapjaw. There's a upcoming in the Snake Men wave with Masters of the Universe. I believe it's Snake Men Wave 2, which is Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 12. An upcoming character is going to be the mini comics version of Roboto, where he has orange arms and orange legs instead of blue arms and red legs, because the orange version of Roboto is what he looked like in his original mini comic that came with the original back in the day Roboto figure. So basically, there's no real connection to Fisto and Jitsu other than the mini comic that came with them, which basically has them fighting each other briefly, but going on forward, they were never meant to be, or they were never aimed at each other's rival. And another figure, character, accessory, vehicle, whatever you want to call it, was released at the same time during the vintage toy line, and that was the Warhorse Stridor. And now, Stridor, I had as a child, and honestly, as a child, I got Stridor the same Christmas that I got Fisto. So even when I opened these guys as kids, as Christmas presents, I was always under the impression that they were meant to be together. That Fisto was, that Stridor was Fisto's horse. And the reason a lot of people thought that was because you have the heroic warhorse Stridor, but you also had the evil warrior version of Stridor, Night Stalker, and that's what Jitsu was often placed inside. And they even had a 2-pack back in the day where Fisto and Stridor came together. But if you look at the vintage Stridor box, it has He-Man riding Stridor, and in even other comic book depictions, Stridor is often shown to be like a Royal Eternian mount that the Palace Guards will ride into battle as, and often as just transportation. So like there's a whole, there's a whole stable of war horses, of Stridors at their the Eternals army's the Eternals army's disposal, Eternian army, however you want to say it. But back in the day, he had the same action features as the vintage characters. I mean, it was basic action features. You were able to turn his waist and let go of his arm, and he would he would have the power punch, but other than that, he didn't really have any other action features. He had his oversized fist, which was great when you were doing that power punch, because obviously I'm recreating it for the purpose of having the Origins figure, but back in the day, if I would have wound it back and then let go, he automatically would have swung through with that punch. But the Origins figure doesn't do that justice. But real quick, while I am talking about this Fisto Origins figure, I want to give a shout out to my friend Andy Heder. It was Andy Heder who actually found me this Fisto character, because that was at a time, Fisto, I believe, was Wave 5 of Masters of the Universe Origins, and I wasn't able to see any of the Wave 5 characters locally at the time, but Andy was able to see some of the figures down in Pennsylvania, and I remember Andy was out and about, and he saw Fisto, and he asked me if I needed him, and of course I did, so Andy wound up scooping me Fisto. So thank you very much, Andy Heder, for helping me acquire this figure and add it to my collection. But yeah, you got Fisto, you got Stridor. They were classic characters back in the day when I was a kid. Definitely two of my favorites, especially because I had Fisto, I had Jitsu. It was nice having both of those characters, and in my hours of play as a child, Fisto and Jitsu had many battles. And moving on to the Origins line, it's very interesting seeing how close to the original figure this is, but how different it is at the same time. He's got the 16 points of articulation, so his arms go up, his arms go down. He's got the swivel at the elbow, so his arms twist and move. His elbows bend so he could open and close his arm, and even the fist rotates and spins around so you can move it and pose the fist however you like it. He bends at the knees, he swivels at the calf, and his ankle bends and rotates. So he moves pretty well. He's got his armor, which is this time around, unlike the back in the day Fisto armor where it was two pieces of hard plastic that snapped together. This time it's the soft, pliable plastic, which just hooks inside itself and on the sides, and it looks pretty fucking fresh. And he comes with his giant ass purple sword. And for those of you that don't know, the sword that comes with Fisto is actually the same sword that comes with Triclops, except it's all purple instead of being green. And I believe there's black on the Triclops sword as well. But yeah, Origins Fisto looks pretty friggin' dope. And like I said, just going back into the character, like back in the day, I got introduced to Fisto as the action figure. I got the mini comic that came with the figure that gave me a little bit of an idea of who and what exactly Fisto is all about. Then they had the Filmation cartoon that first introduced Fisto as a bad guy, which really confused me as a kid, because it's like, hey, this episode has nothing to do with the mini comic that came with the character, and it's like a completely different origin and backstory, and it didn't make any sense. It seemed like kind of like a waste of a Fisto episode, because they didn't even do anything correctly with him. But after the Filmation series ended, Fisto only had like a few cameo appearances after that. But moving on with the line, after Mattel pulled the plug of Masters of the Universe at the end of '87 going into '88, after the collapse of the movie, the line went away for a couple of years. Well, actually, it went away for about a year and a half, until the New Adventures of He-Man came out, Space He-Man and Space Skeletor, which in my opinion fucking sucked. There's a lot of people that love the New Adventures of He-Man and Space He-Man. I absolutely despise it. I hate it. Maybe I was just pissed off because that was like coming up on the first Christmas, like the year after my parents got divorced the second time, and I already lost my OG vintage He-Man, and then all of a sudden this shit got just thrown up at retail, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Why is He-Man in space? Why are they completely different sized characters? They don't even fit in. I do not like this He-Man. I fucking hated it as a kid. But, you know, throughout the 90s, Masters of the Universe got no love. It was the New Adventures until that died off, which was like 92, 93. And then from like 93 to the end of the 2000s, nobody was talking about Masters of the Universe. The only people that were talking about Masters of the Universe were the people that were buying like Toy Fair magazine and other magazines like that, trying to keep an eye on what their vintage toys were worth and whatnot. But then rolling into the 2000s, and I've talked about this briefly previously at times, and I'll continue to always go back to it. But in the 2002, 2003, Cartoon Network, Toonami, and they came out with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and that was worked into that Toonami block on Cartoon Network. So it's like you had this Mike Young series that had, you know, an amazing, at the time, early 2000 anime flair for American television type feel to it, and it was just a brand new, fresh look at Masters of the Universe, and everything with the 2000X line I absolutely loved, even though I despise it at the same time, because I feel Mattel allowed it to bomb at retail, did nothing to fix it, and because of the poor retail sales, it affected the cartoon series continuing, and it totally sucked. But in that new Masters of the Universe series, Fisto was introduced in that series, and there's an interesting story with this time frame, because at the time when the Mike Young 2000X Masters of the Universe series was on Cartoon Network, now any episode that Fisto showed up in, he was always referred to as Fisto. But if you went to the store and you went to find a Fisto action figure, you were gonna get a Fisto action figure, but you were gonna notice something different when you were getting that action figure. Because the action figure on the packaging didn't say Fisto. The packaging said Battle Fist. And they wound up changing Fisto's name for the purpose of the retail packaging. And the reason for that is apparently, well, it's not apparently, it's because during that early 2000 period, and basically, I mean, you could pinpoint it from like 1999 to 2005, that's when, you know, Lucasfilm, George Lucas was working on the Star Wars prequel trilogy, and by working on the Star Wars prequel trilogy, you had a shit ton of new characters that were being trademarked and licensed, and one of the characters that was trademarked, licensed, and was being used was the Jedi named Kit Fisto. He is the squid-looking Jedi with the tentacle head and whatnot. And so because Hasbro was making Kit Fisto Star Wars toys, Mattel wasn't able to call Fisto Fisto because you can't have two characters apparently sitting on retail pegs with the same fucking name, even though they're tied to two different properties being made by two different toy companies. But it is what it is. So Battle Fist existed. But the one thing about the 2000X Mike Young series that kind of confuses me is because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't understand why sometimes they go out of their way to change certain things. And one of the things about Fisto is I don't understand why his background was changed for the purpose of the 2000X series. Because basically there was a the storyline goes, there was like the Great Unrest, the Great War. It was a legendary Eternian battle that the Masters were a part of. And I believe Fisto was one of the Masters at that time. And apparently, Fisto went missing during battle. And with Fisto going missing during battle, the other Masters, mainly Man-at-Arms, thought Fisto deserted and went AWOL, abandoned the Masters, and he basically thought he was a coward, and he was dead to him. And but then Fisto returns, and you find out that Fisto's suffering from amnesia. He doesn't really remember much from this Great War. And there's another element of the story where the sorceress, during this great unrest, took care of this wounded warrior who was suffering from amnesia, who didn't remember who he was, how he got there, what happened to him. And basically, it's like they're trying to change it to where Fisto went missing. Fisto was found by the sorceress. The sorceress wounded this warrior with amnesia back to health, but then allegedly they fell in love. Okay? And you have that. And then you have the storyline element that's been known for years, going back to the sorceress being saved by Man-at-Arms from Merman, and there was a baby, and the baby wound up being baby Tila, and the sorceress couldn't, because of her duties as the sorceress, she couldn't focus and give Tila the life she deserves. So Man-at-Arms agreed to raise the child as his own, and Man-at-Arms has always been the adoptive father of Tila, and Tila has always been the daughter of the sorceress, and that's been even further hinted, and they even took it further that they're kind of like a dysfunctional happy family in Masters of the Universe Revelations, because the sorceress gets killed and Man-at-Arms feels it the most, and he's like, my love, you know what I mean? So it's in the Revelations universe, they love each other, but they can't be together because of their responsibilities. And at the same time, with Tila being their daughter, they gotta, to use a wrestling term, they gotta do what's best for business for the purpose of protecting Castle Grayskull and Eternia. They gotta do what's best for business. So they gotta be responsible. You gotta be Man-at-Arms. She's gotta be the sorceress. Tila's gotta be the captain of the guard. Don't rock the boat. But I feel that these writers are rocking the boat by adding this unnecessary layer to this puzzle, because they're making it crystal clear that Fisto is Man-at-Arms' brother. That gets known in the 2000X series, and the thing with Fisto and Man-at-Arms being brothers is, if you add this extra layer where Fisto was tied in with the sorceress, they're basically summing it up that Fisto Fisto, suffering from amnesia, had a fling with the sorceress, The sorceress got pregnant. The sorceress had a baby. The sorceress got attacked by Merman. Man-at-Arms saved the day, rescued the baby. They made an arrangement and a deal. I need you to watch this kid because I got to be the sorceress and shit. So there you have like the dynamic. Now you're adding Fisto to the mix. We're like Fisto, like this is some this is some Masters of the Universe Maury Povich shit. Like, who's the fucking daddy? Who is Teela's real daddy? God damn it! You know, it's like the sort of, you know, somebody. It's like, does Fisto want a paternity test? Does Man-at-Arms want a paternity test? What the fuck is going on here? It's just crazy and ridiculous, and it's unnecessary in my opinion. I think they should have just left well enough alone with the whole Teela sorceress Man-at-Arms dynamic, and they didn't even have to worry about, you know, whether or not Fisto's involved or not. But the one thing I do want to go back to Fisto and Jitsu, for that matter, is the one thing that I find interesting between both Jitsu and Fisto is it all goes back to Mattel's 70s Big Jim line. The Big Jim line was quite popular in the 70s, and going into the 80s, when as the Big Jim line was being phased out and Masters of the Universe was getting ready to launch, there's a lot of elements from the Big Jim line that influenced, inspired, and even carried over into the Masters of the Universe line. And Fisto is a great example of that. Now, basically, with the Big Jim line, you had the Big Jim character. You know, he was just your basic Caucasian male character, right? Then you had... Now, you know what? I'll tell you what. Give me a second. Check this shit out. Alright, we're back. We had to reset the camera real quick. But what I was saying is, with the Big Jim line, okay, you had Big Jim, he was the main character, and I'm pulling all this from Wikipedia, but he's the basic good guy leader of the pack. He's an average Caucasian male with a few distinguishable characteristics, except having a permanent good attitude and joy for life. Then you have Big Jack. Now, Big Jack is one of Big Jim's friends. However, Big Jack was one of the first African-American characters with a friendly attitude that made it into toys without racial stereotypes. Then you have, and this is where it ties into Fisto, in my opinion, Big Josh. No, I'm not talking about Matt Bourne. Big Josh is effectively Big Jim with a beard. He's one of Jim's best friends and was positioned as the tough guy amongst the group, which I feel sums up Fisto perfectly. He has red hair, he has a red beard, he has an oversized fist, and he likes to show off his strength. You know, he likes to have he likes to have test of strength contests with He-Man and whatnot. And you know, based on the Masters of the Universe's roots to Big Jim in some aspects, I feel Fisto had a little bit of Big Josh carried over into his character design, especially when it comes to the red hair and the beard. So I think that's pretty fresh. Plus he had the red hair and the beard, plus I think that's pretty fucking fresh. But another thing I want to take a look at real quick is because I mentioned Jitsu real quick. I mentioned Jitsu real quick in his golden hand, the chopping hand that looks like the Infinity Gauntlet. There's a character in the Big Jim line called Dr. Steel. And Dr. Steel came with a steel right hand and an iron pipe and a large dragon tattoo. So, I mean, he had the hand gimmick first in the Big Jim line, but then you got two characters in Masters of the Universe that had the oversized hand gimmick. And, you know, like I said, it ties back to Big Jim in my opinion, especially how Fisto compares to Big Josh, and I even said with talking about Trap Jaw, there was an unreleased character named Iron Jaw who had the same mechanical jaw, and he had the same mechanical arm with the interchangeable weapon attachments. It was just, to me, I find that very interesting. You know what I mean? It's like, if something doesn't work the first time around, we'll try it again down the line a different way, and it's absolutely amazing in my opinion. But today, since we're talking about Fisto, I figured for the Patreon subscribers, I would take today's episode and I will officially open up my Masterverse Fisto. I'm looking forward to this Masterverse Fisto. The feels quite heavy, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before we get to the unboxing and the opening, I do want to thank the Patreon subscribers real quick. When I started the show, I started the Patreon, and since starting the Patreon, I've been growing the Patreon. All of y'all that subscribe for $1 a month to get 30 days access to the bonus footage and get your name in the credits and whatnot, you have contributed to my first major figure purchase of the year. This past week, I officially pre-ordered Masters of the Universe Origins Snake Men Wave 1. And that includes Snake Armor He-Man, it includes Cobra Khan, Ratlore, and it includes... Who the fuck does it include? Boltman! That's who it is, Boltman. I'm like, it's a Ruler of the Sun character. Fuck. And why am I having a hard time even remembering this right now? I already made a post on the Patreon. Y'all already got this post. I already shared the shit on Facebook. See, I'm already getting sidetracked and making sure I update y'all with news that I already brought to your attention. So, with that said, basically, I got those 4 figures pre-ordered. They should be arriving anytime this month. So, based on the Patreon payout from all of y'all paid for one of those figures. So one of those figures in that wave, I am adding to my collection because of y'all. I don't know if it's Snake Armor He-Man. I don't know if it's Ratlore. I don't know if it's Boltman. I don't know if it's Cobra Khan. That's completely up to you. Whatever character in that wave that you want to associate with your $1 contribution to Ian vs. Daddybones, that is your choice. But with that said, let's open up Fisto!
Fuck Ian Daddybones. Fuck Twin Widow, whatever the hell it is. No one gives a shit about you, Ian. Everyone hates you. Fuck off.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. Having a banger and you're all invited. Share with friends and I'll see you later. Bring everyone, invite my haters. Throw your hands in the fucking air. Let's push a cripple down a flight of stairs. Got new shit right for your ears. My Hadouken is downright fierce. Rock out with my cock out. Jump around, I got your shout outs. I'm Daddybones, no need to panic. Talking riddles like a schizophrenic. 24/7, I got the party. Roofie-roos and whoop-de-doos. Retarded fools with attitudes, bro. Everything's mixed with Bacardi. Glow stick black like tons of bubbles. Titties on bitches, nothing but trouble. Got my pills, ain't no quitter. Pop that shit, here comes my glitter. Not a dancer, I got no skills. Bobbing my head and standing still. Tons of bitches, ravers, goths. Down the fuck and get your salad tossed. It's the greatest thing that you ever saw. Put your hands in the air for a party. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Having a bang and you're all invited. Hey kids posing, muscles flexing, trainings dressed like your favorite X-Men. If there's one thing that drives me crazy, you give high fives but you fucking hate me. Might have rabies, might have herpes. Breastfeed me and you'll have to burp me. I'll be up on stage, throwing out beads, grabbing my dick and spraying my seed all over your face. That's fucking rude. Raise it up and show your boobs. Dance around and go friggin' nuts. Just b-boy stance and light your blunts. Don't be a cunt. Tuck your chain, don't start no shit. Use your brain, it's all a game. Let's play some Yahtzee. Eat Tide Pods and punch a Nazi. Not a dancer, I got no skills.
Alright, we're back. as you can see, I have officially opened up, unboxed Masterverse Fisto. It's absolutely fucking fresh. I mean, compared to the other Masterverse figures that I opened so far, he's just as detailed. You know, he moves in the right places like he's supposed to, and he's got his oversized fist in Masterverse form. And like I pointed out to the Patreon subscribers, this Fisto actually comes with a die-cast metal fist. So there's 100% Hot Wheels car in that fucking punch of doom. But he also comes with his sword, which, in all honesty, is the same sword that came with Triclops in the Masterverse line, just like the Origins Fisto came with the purple sword that came with the Origins Triclops, just like the back in the day vintage character came with the vintage Triclops' sword. So shared parts, shared accessories, all around. But I do gotta say, you know, like I said, you know, I mean, I've said numerous times, I'm having such a blast collecting these lines. Like, I'm having so fun, like, running it back to my childhood and getting reacquainted with old friends, making some new ones that never got to see the light of day back in the day. Like, for example, we got Frogmonger. We officially added Frogmonger. He's going to be opened up on a future episode of the show. I don't exactly know when I'm going to get the Frogmonger, but we'll get to him at some point. The Dungeon Dweller at Castle Grayskull is pretty fucking dope. Everybody seems to be very impressed with the way he looks and the way he came out once people started getting him in the mail, once Mattel started shipping him out. But yeah, I got a lot on deck for the next 2 months. We're gonna officially kick off the Rise of the Snake Men. Next week, I'm gonna be talking about Mechanic and the Ground Ripper. I'm gonna be opening this up, as well as, like I said in the beginning of the episode, this week's episode is gonna segue into next week's episode, which is gonna segue into the other episode. But right now, like, we talked about Stridor. Stridor has always been considered a vehicle within Masters of the Universe, even though he's a rideable steed like Battle Cat and Panther. But that's it. Like, he's a vehicle, and I feel that since a lot of people make the connections between Stridor and Fisto, that's why I wanted to talk about Stridor today. But next week, we're going to officially talk about vehicles that have been introduced into the Masters of the Universe line, the Masters of the Universe Origins line, and I'm going to run down some vehicles that have been released so far. So we're going to be talking about the Wind Raider, the Roton, the Sky Sled, and we're going to be opening up Mechanic and the Ground Ripper. So again, from all of us here at Ian vs. Daddybones, thank you very much for watching. For the Patreon subscribers, thank you all for your support. We're nothing without you. You motivate the fuck out of me and you keep me going. And for everybody else, just hit that share button, smash that subscribe, click that bell notification so you can be alert and well ready when a new episode of Ian vs. Daddybones drops. The Original Geeks podcast is coming back the weekend of WrestleMania. The $3 tier is going to be added to the Patreon, and you're only going to be able to hear the Original Geeks podcast if you subscribe to the Patreon. So with that said, we will see you next time. Cheers, Pete!